Joining us now for a special conversation, please welcome Marc Jackson, motivational speaker, NBA analyst, NBC Sports, NCAA analyst, ESPN, and former 13-year professional basketball player, and interviewer Jabari Young, senior editor.
Thank you guys, really appreciate it, and I'm sorry I didn't see a lot of your faces yesterday at the event. Sherry and Leanne, they said, hey, can you do Wednesday, and Jimmy? And I'm like, okay, great. And they said, well, you do Thursday too. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not gonna drive Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because I live all the way near Six Flags, and it's like a 2-hour drive. So I appreciate seeing all of you, and I hope that I can meet all of you, the people that I don't know, because Randall has challenged me to make sure that I know everybody in the company. And Catherine just told me it's like 800 people. I don't know if I'm going to achieve the goal, but one person I do know is Marc Jackson. And, Marc is more than just a former NBA player. For those of you who don't know, a quick recap of his career. He was drafted in 1997 by the Golden State Warriors, played his first few seasons over Europe to earn a living. And then after that, made his debut in about 2000, and then went on to play for the Warriors, the Sixers, the Timberwolves, the New Orleans Hornets at that point. Now they're the Pelicans. And the Nets, Brooklyn Nets, New Jersey, Brooklyn Nets. About 10 years in the NBA. And I met him at Comcast Sportsnet when I was a production assistant. I would always follow him around and see if I can get advice and write little articles on him when I was a little sports editor up at the Mainline paper. And over that time, he became a great friend. And so when we stick to the theme of, build to win and going the extra mile, I was just telling him, man, I'm going to share my Tim Duncan story with you on stage. He's like, what's Tim Duncan's story? I left in 2013 Philly, where I grew up at, and I went to San Antonio. I got an opportunity to go down there to cover the Spurs for 5 years. And here I am, this young hotshot reporter, and Tim Duncan, right, we're all adults in the room, he's going through a divorce, right? And he's playing bad. So I'm thinking, oh, well, he's playing bad because maybe he's having problems at home, right? Sometimes it carries over. And I'm thinking, like, man, let me just ask that question. Nobody's asking him if his play is happening, if it's at home or if it's impacting his play. But I was nervous. I had to go the extra mile, right? And I did that. I said, I'm going to call Marc. See what Marc says. And Marc picked up the phone, and I said, Marc, man, I think I'm going to ask Tim this question. He said, Jabari, if you ask Tim that question, he's going to look at you, stare you in the face. I'm thinking, oh, he's going to give me a good answer. He's never going to talk to you again. Yeah. And I didn't ask the question, right? And so it's that type of stuff of where you say going the extra mile. Sometimes you need to make that extra phone call to be able to go the extra mile, because I wanted to win. I wanted to sustain a career. And I think if I was chasing a headline at that time, I might not have been here today, because I'm sure Tim Duncan would have probably denied everything. I wouldn't have gotten anywhere, and here we go. So, but listen, man, sticking with that theme here as we speak to my coworkers, build to win, going the extra mile. What do you see about going the extra mile, especially in today's social media world where your personal brand is everything?
Jabari, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I appreciate you for thinking of me. When it comes to building your social brand, it comes to putting things out there. What is sensitive? What is not sensitive? What do you want to share? How deep do you want to go with sharing your life, your journey? For me, I was always I was an introvert sometimes, extrovert sometimes. So for me, I kind of stuck to myself. I've always been a loner. I've always given myself. Basketball was life for me. I'm from a very bad, poverty-stricken background. Grew up with no heat, no running water in the city of Philadelphia. And I knew basketball was one of the things that saved me. So as I progressed through my journey, I always was a loner. When I played in the NBA, we went on road trips. I always stayed in my room. I was on a room service, never went out to eat. And then later in my career, one of my coaches said, Marc, you have to start falling in love with people. I was like, no, I've always been alone. He said, but you're not alone no more. And you have to be comfortable with people knowing more about you and building your brand. So what I see is that you have to be comfortable within yourself. If it's not in you, it's not in you. Don't force something that's not genuinely within you and within your parameters you feel comfortable doing. And for me, I just think I turned a new leaf, and I kind of just became an extrovert. Just kind of throwing myself out there, meeting new people. Like 30 years ago, I would never want to be here. I'm like, nope, too many people, nope. And now I want to meet everyone. I make sure I've always been a person I spoke to everyone that ever walked by me. No one walks by me anywhere in the world, and I've lived in 5 different countries that I've never spoke to. So I think just being comfortable within yourself and putting yourself out there and you never know what that can do for others. It's not just about doing for you.
Yeah, and they do it to you too. Marc introduced me to one of my coworkers today, right? They went right up to him and said, and Marc said, by the way, this is Jabari.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Right?
Absolutely did.
You also, man, you fast forward your life. You, again, grew up in Philadelphia like myself, so we have that identity in North Philadelphia. Went to Temple, same way, and the guy my coworker also went to Temple, so we was a Temple family out there. But you played under legendary coach John Chaney. How many people in here know who John Chaney was? Raise your hand. Okay, Google him right now, right, please. But John Chaney was a legendary head coach, right? I mean, he is, the clip that you might see pop up is when he was ready to choke John Calipari at that time at the press conference. But the one thing that, people respected about John Chaney is his 5 a.m. practices, right? Does anybody know why he had 5 a.m. practices? I see a whole bunch of hands. You. I'm playing. I didn't see any hands. So the reason that he had those 5 a.m. practices is because he didn't want kids to miss class. There was no reason for you to miss class if you have 5 a.m. practices, right? And so I asked you, man, what's the biggest thing that maybe John Chaney has taught you about life that you still apply today?
A couple of things. For me, first was, like I said, I grew up in a poverty home. I didn't have a father growing up. So Coach John Chaney gave himself to fatherless kids. He made sure that young youth felt a male role model in their life. So I have a nonprofit mentorship for young men in Philadelphia, ages 8 to 16, that I'm very involved in heavily, and I give myself to them, my time, my energy, my wisdom, motivation, whatever I can, I give to them. That's very important to me. And secondly, just always make sure, sometimes I've been told I'm an intimidating figure, but I understand is don't be afraid to smile. Invite people in, open the door, let them know the door is open. There's a difference between building a wall and putting a fence. And it's a difference showing them the entrance as opposed to showing there's no entrance. So by me smiling, making sure people know that I'm friendly, I also like to meet them. It's not about me, I want to learn about you. So to have a conversation, I ask a lot of questions because I want to learn about you. And I think that's something we go through life sometimes where we think, okay, yeah, how you doing? We're very surface level. Me personally, I get by surface in the first 5 minutes. I'm gonna know about you, your family, your history, everything, just so I can best know how to comfort you and let you know you're in a safe place to have a conversation. So I learned those things from Coach John Chaney.
Yeah, and one of the things I've learned, maybe not from John, but definitely from covering the Spurs and Coach Pop, and even along my journey covering the NBA, was you never forget the human element of things, right? The human element of things. Now, what is that, right? Maybe not a divorce is a good example, but if a guy's playing bad, remember the human element of things. Maybe something's going on in his life. Maybe it's never forget to make that phone call, right? Never forget to just call up a player. Hey, man, no, I don't want anything. I'm just calling to check on you, man. It's those things that really, really take you far, right? You don't have to just be calling to make a sale or to make a deal or a pitch. Yep. And I ask you, man, obviously you had to develop a great deal of trust in your time as an athlete. But how do you, kind of extend that trust now, being as though that people probably still want something from you because of what you are, you're still on TV, you're still a prominent figure. How do you develop that trust, especially with somebody that you just met?
Well, I think conversation does a lot for you. Conversation does a lot for you. And like I said, I get very to the chase. I don't stay surface level. I get very deep with people. No matter if it's just a conversation over coffee, no matter what it is. But I'm like many players, I've been taken advantage of business-wise, where I thought something was a good deal and it wasn't a good deal. So it always early in my life as a professional, closed that door where I kind of was more standoffish because I got burnt this time, got burnt that time. And I like I said, I shut myself off. But then when I realized just making sure people see how deep you can get and how deep you want to get, and I've learned that, and I've learned over the course of time that people always reveal their true self. It may not be as soon as you would like to it, but they eventually will. But if you're genuine with your purpose and your calling in life, you can be okay.
Yeah, and one thing I love about you too, man, you're never afraid to ask a question. It's like, it doesn't matter how small. It's like, Marc, you should know that. He's never afraid to ask if he doesn't know, right?
Never assume.
Is that a trait that you had to learn? Like, hey, you know what? Even if it's something small, like last night we was talking about just the train getting to where we were supposed to meet at, right? And I'm like, Marc, you grew up in Brooklyn, you from Philly, you don't know, but you wasn't afraid to ask.
Never.
Is that something you had to learn?
A lot of times we don't like to ask questions because we're scared to seem like we don't know everything.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, no, I don't know everything. And if you know everything, something's wrong with you. It is. That's how I feel. So people say, oh, I know. No, you don't. I don't care what your profession is. I don't care what you master in. You don't know everything about everything. So I like to ask the simple questions to let people know, oh, this guy's really intrigued. This guy's really, I really want to learn. And that's how I've always been. I'm that person. I love being put in a situation or in a different room or in a different profession. I have no idea, and I get addicted to it, and I learn, and I become addicted to it. Yeah. And I think that's all from asking questions.
Yeah. Got about 7 minutes left. I definitely want to leave 2 minutes for questions, if there are any. But right fast, man, take me back to, was that 2009, when you pivoted from being an athlete to just an ordinary citizen, right? Mm-hmm. Take me back to that process. Like, were you depressed at a time? Because one of the hardest things I found with athletes is making that transition from being what they were to what they have to now face, right? Where you have to hold those conversations, you have to think business, you have to think about building relationships, you have to transfer some people like LeBron never have to worry about that, right? But you did. What was that process like?
Well, the process for me, the way I knew I was going to retire was, two things happened in the course of 8 hours. I have 3 sons now, ages 17, 16, and 13. And one time I was running around the property with them, just playing, and my knees was hurting. I've never had knee pain in my life. And I felt like an old man, my knees are hurting. That's interesting. And then it just shook it off. And then in the middle of the night, middle of the night, I went to wake up to go to the restroom. I woke up, I went to lean up, and I had this sharp pain in my back. And it felt like I just been kicked by a horse. And I was like, what was that? I said, I'm done. And I looked at my wife at the time, and I said, I'm done. She said, what you mean done? I said, I'm not playing ever again. She said, what do you mean? I said, I'm done. I'm going to retire. She looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, I'm done.
How do you know it wasn't a back cramp, though?
No, but listen, that was twice. I've never had that. And I'm a workout junkie. I still work out to this day. And at those 2 instances, when it prevented me from enjoying life with my sons that are closest to my heart, I said something got to change. And I told the team, I said, I'm done. What you mean you're retire? I said, I'm done. I'll wait till after All-Star break, which is another month, and then I'm done. And that's after I retired. I walked away and never looked back. So then when I transitioned, I got a little funny. I got a little different story than most players. Like, when you retire, you look for things that help you with your adrenaline, that help you kind of stay more. I was raised in the inner city projects of North Philadelphia, but I've always had a thing for horses. And like I said, I love to master something I have no idea about. So my first NBA paycheck, I didn't buy a Ferrari or a Porsche. I bought a horse.
I never knew that. Wow.
I bought a horse, and I actually had a ranch here in New Jersey, at 150 acres here in New Jersey, where I actually had horses. And then I moved to Tampa, Florida, right outside Tampa, Florida, and I started competing in rodeos.
Wow. Mark, you teaching me something I never knew about you. Is there footage of this?
Yeah, I got footage, everything.
Oh. So, is it online?
It should be.
Okay.
Listen, and that helped me. So when I retired, I started traveling the country, Reno, Nevada, Tinsley, Wyoming, actually competing in rodeos. And people and I thought I was the biggest cowboy out there. It's people bigger than me. It was bigger than me. And that helped me. But depression didn't creep in. I'm like a little person, so the pressure for me, I went through a glimpse of a depressed state at a certain point in my life. Didn't happen then because I had my children, I had my wife at the time. It's when I got divorced. When I got divorced, then it was like my whole world just turned upside down. And I was the one that filed because it just wasn't working out. But I was going to see my sons every day. I remember I grew up with no father. And not seeing my sons every morning when I wake up, and we split custody of my sons, but the days they're not with me, when that first happened, that was a depressed moment in life. I had to get therapy. I had to get, I had to surround myself with great friends and mentors, and it didn't deep in too deep. But that, with the fact my world was about basketball, family. When the basketball ended, I started family. When the family ended, I was like, oh. And that's when it hit me.
Yeah.
And then I have great friends. I talk to you quite a lot. Talked to one of my mentors, one of the top world leaders in hospitality. He was there for me, and we just had conversations. And because I like conversing, it became natural, became easier to transition out of that state of mind and just to find my happiness.
Absolutely. When you talk about, and we have a lot of my colleagues here that sells, marketing, live team, but how do you still talk to a lot of your brethren in the NBA,
absolutely.
right? We both do. How do you pitch an athlete? Like, what would you tell people in the room about pitching an athlete, whether it be on a business or an event that we're trying to do? Like, how do you get to them today? Because they don't need media like that anymore. Yeah. Because of social media, they have their own direct line to get to their fans. So we become the middlemen, right? Yes. But we're still needed. So how do you kind of like walk that fine line, and what would you tell these people about talking to today's athlete?
So, everyone, not everyone, but most players, athletes have middlemen, where they have people you have to go through to get to them. A lot of times it's be yourself, put yourself in a room or an environment where they see you more than once. When you walk into an athlete and it's your first time meeting them, they don't hear nothing you have to say. Respect it. I don't care how good of a deal you have or how business, they don't have nothing you have to say. And it may be to benefit them. If they see you once, they used to getting this every day, all day. So when you approach an athlete, a former or current athlete, they really won't trust you until they see you. When they see you in events, when they see you more than once, they see you again. And all you do is say, hi, my name is. You see them again, hi, my name is, I met you here. Hi, my name is, I met you a few other times. And then they start seeing you, becoming familiar with your face. Believe it or not, they'll start researching who you are. If you say, I'm such and such a Forbes, this is what I do, they'll start, believe it or not, they will start researching you. So when they see you again, they say, hi, man, I'm gonna see you a few times. Can we have a conversation? You got a minute? And you can't say, let's schedule something, because you're never gonna get scheduled. Say, you got a minute? I was thinking about this. And after your third or fourth or fifth time meeting them, they remember your face, they put you with a company, and then they say, oh, that's you. Or that's Jabari before. And then they say, and that's how you pitch them. But please, whatever you do, when you go to an athlete, and try to go directly to the athlete. Don't try to go to the middle people. When you go to the middle people, 99% of the times you're not going to get to them. So make sure you approach them, but make sure you put yourself in an environment, in a room where you're in space you see them more than once, or twice, or three times. By that third or fourth time they develop a familiarity with you, then they're comfortable speaking to you.
Yeah, I told somebody that, very phone call this morning. We were talking about a player today. I don't want to say his name because it still might happen, but being pitched on, during a Forbes event. And I said, did you talk to him? He's like, no. I'm like, wait until you see him and ask that player directly, because sometimes you try to filter the messages and it gets everybody has their own agenda. 2 minutes here. I promise to get the questions, but last minute leadership stuff. Always like to lead people with something. Springtime is a couple of weeks away, right? Any good leadership books that you've read over the last year or two that is still pumping through your veins today because there was so much good information in it that you want to share?
A quick read that I had was a book called Climb by Ben Kenyon, who's actually the strength and conditioning coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. Great motivator, great story, tells your story, and he gives you impactful things. It's called Climb. He gives you tools that you can actually use. Like, we all readers here. You're not successful in this room if you haven't read. You read something like, but that's really not applicable. Like, how would I do it? How do I put this in my life? His book, Climb, put me into a phase where it not just it's action. It creates action. Let's get it done. Let's do this. And I've always been a man of action. But then it also pivots you to other books. Like I'm reading a book called Sleep currently. They talk about the importance of sleep and how it affects you overall health. And I know we're just starting to understand the importance of sleep. But when you see it really broken down in that term, and you can really see how it applies to you, it keeps leading you to progress through life and see how your action today benefits from what you did yesterday.
Yeah, so climb, sleep, and then when you get up and you can't do any of that, start doing rodeo. That'll help you out. Right? Any questions for Marc Jackson? Sherry.
I'm going to start off here. Thanks, Marc.
My pleasure.
So you didn't get to this part, but Marc is the Sixers post-game announcer. How do you stick with a team when they're not having a great season or their star player is hurt and you got to muster through and kind of find that energy, bring that post-game energy when the team is not at its best?
Great question. I'm a little different from a lot of, I call ourselves talking heads, guys, people, media members who talk for the actual team. I got a lot of heat a few years ago where we had one of our good players didn't perform well and the coach kind of made excuses. But me being from Philadelphia kind of allows me to speak freely when I'm talking about Philadelphia, because they know I just don't speak on the Sixers. I am a Sixer. I am raised in Philadelphia, so I can speak freely. And if I was doing this for the public or somebody else, I would kind of caution myself. Is when you are invested in a team, like when you're invested in your company, it hits you personally. But when you lived it, when I've lived what them players are trying to do, it allows me to speak to the point where they know it's genuine. It's nothing like, I would never use phrases like this person sucks, or this person that. I'm like, well, can you do what they do? I've been in certain situations where I've been on a losing team. We have to turn it around. The biggest thing is understand that when I do things for the Sixers and television, it's not for the Sixers and their players, it's for the fan base. And they're the number one priority. They need to hear the truth. And I'm big on speaking the truth to them.
And it's great that question came from Sherry, too, right? Because we went the extra mile just to kind of bring it all home. You know, we had lunch months ago, that was, right in Villanova, and me and Marc was meeting. Sherry was there, and we were all talking about ways to, Marc said, I want to do some stuff for y'all. And the fact that he's here right now kind of all brings it home. Went the extra mile, had that lunch, had a great conversation, right? And here he is, and now we'll leave the stage. Thank you all.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.